Why this Atlanta neighborhood has become so irresistible. Ansley Park. Ansley Park has fewer than 10 homes for sale right now, and a lot of those never even hit Zillow before they are sold. After 28 years of selling in town Atlanta, I can tell you pretty clearly, this is one of the only neighborhoods in the city that really can't be recreated. The history. Atlanta's first luxury suburb. So, Ansley Park was designed using the same landscape principles behind Central Park living, and over 120 years later, it still does. It all started in 1904 with Edwin Ansley, when Atlanta was expanding north. And I mean, he was super intentional about this. He didn't want another grid neighborhood. He wanted a motor car suburb where you could get downtown easily, but still live in a quieter, more residential setting. And you see that right away in the layout. Solon Z. Ruff took a lot of influence from Frederick Law Olmsted, the same person behind Central Park and our very own Piedmont Park. So instead of straight streets and standard blocks, you get these wide curving roads that follow the hills. You've got original granite curbs. You've got mature trees that have been there for over 100 years. And the whole neighborhood is about 275 acres. And with roughly a third of that set aside as 14 internal parks woven all the way through. Back in 1912, the Ansley Golf Club came in, which adds another layer to the lifestyle here. So you've got the land planning, you've got the green space, and then you've got the proximity to Piedmont Park. And all of that together is what really locks in the long-term value. And just keep that in mind for later, because when we get into what you need to know before buying, there's another layer here that really changes how you approach your search. Now, with historic neighborhoods like this, the value isn't coming from something you can just recreate. You can't plant a 100-year-old tree. You can't go into Midtown and suddenly add large winding lots next to a park like that. That kind of infrastructure was put in place over a century ago, and it's been building on itself ever since. So that history is really what drives everything you're seeing in the market today, and the numbers reflect that pretty clearly. Just so you know, if you're seriously looking at Ansley Park and you want to understand what's actually available, including the homes that never hit the public market, that's where I can help. Reach out today so I can give you a very clear picture of what that search actually looks like. My contact info is in the description below. And then let's get into the numbers. The numbers, how the market actually moves. Now, when it comes to the real estate market, Ansley Park is almost all single-family homes. There are a few condo buildings within the neighborhood, and I'll come back to those. The main housing type here is standalone historic homes on larger than average in-town lots. You're looking at Tudor, Georgian and Colonial Revival, Craftsman bungalows, and Italian Renaissance Revival. These were built to stand out, and they still do. Inventory is, and I want to be very clear about this, extremely limited. Right now, you're looking at around 6 homes on the actual market. As of February 2026, the median price sat above the mid 1.5 million range. And when you start looking at what actually makes this neighborhood irreplaceable later on, you understand why Ansley Park is one of the most wanted places in Atlanta. Stick around. Now, this part is really important. A lot of homes in Ansley Park sell off market. They never show up on the public market. These are handled through private networks, agents who have been in this neighborhood for a long time and have real relationships here. You might hear them called pocket listings or quiet listings. The seller hires an agent, the home is marketed privately, and if you're not connected to that network, you're not seeing these opportunities. At this price point, there are no open houses. Showings are by appointment only, and sellers usually want proof of funds before you even step inside. So practically speaking, who you work with here matters more than in most markets. You need someone who knows the neighborhood, knows what might be coming available, and can actually get you in front of those sellers. I've been working in town Atlanta for over 28 years, and I know exactly who to call. Now, If your budget is a little below the single-family range, the condo buildings inside Ansley Park are worth looking at. They're really nice buildings, but the inventory is still limited. You can find options though, and it gives you a real entry point into the same location and lifestyle without that single-family price. So the numbers show very steady demand. But before you start your search, there are a few realities about buying here that most people don't fully see going in. What you need to know before buying. Okay, the home you're picturing in Ansley Park and the purchase you're actually making, these are two very different conversations. And I think that gap is something you really want to understand before you get attached to a listing. Ansley Park is on the National Register of Historic Places, so a lot of the homes fall under local preservation guidelines. And that means if you want to change the exterior, add on, sometimes even just adjust the landscaping, you're going through a certificate of appropriateness with the city. That's going to add time, and it adds planning before you even start a renovation. So practically, if you're buying something that needs work, your budget has to reflect that level of detail. You're working with specialized architects, specific materials, and contractors who know historic homes. And then when you start getting into plumbing, electrical, roofing, and foundation, you're dealing with systems that could be 100 years old. That's a very different scope than a standard remodel. And this becomes even more important when you start comparing this to other nearby areas, because on paper, some of the pricing can look similar. I'll cover that later. So I would say the reality of the market right now is pretty clear. Fully renovated homes, completely updated, move-in ready, those are pushing towards $4 million and above. If you're buying under $2 million, you're almost always renovating. Around $2 million, you might be doing more selective updates. Then, as you get into that $3 million plus range, you're much more likely to find something that's actually turnkey. I've sold teardowns in Ansley Park. Land alone here has carried a significant premium for a really long time, and that's shifted over the years. But the point is, this isn't a low maintenance purchase. Ownership here requires long-term planning and being very realistic about the financial side. But for the right buyer, that level of preparation leads to something you really can't find anywhere else in town. What makes it irresistible? Imagine this. You walk out your front door on a Saturday morning. You're on one of those curved streets, shaded, granite curbs, a tree canopy that has been here for over 100 years. It doesn't feel like you're in the middle of a major city. And then you look up and you catch a glimpse of a Midtown tower through the trees. That contrast is Ansley Park, and it's something you really have to experience to fully understand. So with everything we've gone through, the price, the renovation side, the historic guidelines, why do buyers still compete this hard to get in, and why do people rarely leave? I think it comes down to a few things that really can't be recreated. First is Piedmont Park. Ansley Park borders Piedmont Park along its eastern edge. You're talking about 189 acres, trails, a dog park, an aquatic center, and the home of the Atlanta Botanical Gardens right there. You're next to one of the main green spaces in the entire city, and it changes how you live day to day. Morning walks, weekend markets, events at the garden, it creates a completely different rhythm. Second is the walkability. You can walk to the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. You can walk to the High Museum. You can walk to restaurants and shops throughout Midtown. You can walk to the Ansley Golf Club right inside the neighborhood. And then the Beltline runs along the golf club, so it connects you to other neighborhoods and dining spots. Now, I'll say this clearly. Some of those walks might be just around a mile or so. So that's something to keep in mind. But the access is very real, and you don't get that combination in most in-town areas. Third is the architecture. These homes are historic. They're large and they stay that way. So when you see a house that started in the 1920s, fully updated, expanded, sitting on Peachtree Circle with mature trees and a Midtown skyline above it, that combination is very specific to this neighborhood. neighborhood. And then the fourth piece, and this is really the driver, you can't recreate this. You can't go into Midtown and add large residential lots next to Piedmont Park with 100-year-old trees and historic homes. There's a fixed number of properties here. There's no new construction pipeline. The land was planned a long time ago, and that's what supports long-term value. If my budget was around $3 million and I wanted to be in the center of Atlanta, this is exactly where I would be. And when you compare it to other options around the Midtown area, that position starts to make a lot of sense. How it compares to other Midtown options. After everything we just covered, Ansley Park fills a very specific niche. And I think once you really understand that niche, it becomes a lot clearer if it's the right fit. And I think once you really understand that niche, it becomes a lot clearer if it's the right fit for you or if another in-town option might make more sense. So if you compare it to Midtown high-rise condos, the entry price here is higher, but you're not dealing with an HOA-driven lifestyle. You're not paying monthly fees for amenities you may or may not use. What you get instead is a private lot, a standalone historic home, and outdoor space that's actually yours. So you're trading that vertical convenience for horizontal privacy. And for a certain buyer, that's exactly what they want. Now, compared to Old Fourth Ward, which I know very well and I really like, you're looking at older homes, larger lots, and a much quieter feel in Ansley Park. Old Fourth Ward has the Beltline energy, the mixed-use projects, and the crowds around Ponce City Market on the weekends. Ansley Park is going to feel more established, more residential, with that mature tree canopy and winding streets. Both are strong in-town options, but they just offer very different day-to-day experiences. And then, if you look at West Midtown, Ansley Park is going to feel much more established and much more historic. West Midtown has had a lot of growth, a lot of industrial to residential conversion, and it's been very compelling for buyers. But it doesn't have the same architectural depth, and it doesn't have that direct access to Piedmont Park. So the buyer who chooses Ansley Park is making a very intentional decision. They want walkability to Midtown's cultural spots. They want a standalone, historic home instead of condo living. And they want a neighborhood that has a real sense of permanence, something that I would say is hard to match anywhere else in town. Ansley Park is expensive because the things that make it what it is can't be rebuilt anywhere else in Atlanta. So if you're looking at homes at this level and you want to know what's actually available, including the properties that never hit the public market, you can email me directly at hello@vcgrealty.com. Reach out today. And then the video I linked here goes through 7 of the most underrated Midtown neighborhoods. So if you want to see how the value compares across Midtown, that's a really good next step. Thanks for watching.